everyone. I'm Nina Gopal. Welcome to Global Express, our weekly foray into international events that have a direct impact on India and its neighborhood and beyond. So, President Donald Trump wasn't bluffing. The world today is transfixed by what is being described as Trump's instigation of the silliest trade war in living history, in living memory. But is it silly? Is it really dumb? When you look back, it is an elaboration of Trump 1.0 when he renegotiated free trade agreements with a whole host of countries. Can we expect the same? He set off an extraordinary trade war with Canada, the US's closest ally, America's closest neighbor and NATO ally, the country that provides the US, I hear, with 4.3 million barrels of oil a day. The US consumes 20 million barrels a day, and domestically it produces 13.2 million barrels. But Trump keeps saying he doesn't need Canada for anything. He also keeps saying Canada can avoid all the tariffs by becoming the US's 51st state. Trump has imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. He has imposed 10% tariffs on Canadian energy products and 25% on goods imported from the most important economy in Latin America, Mexico, and another 10% tariff on goods imported from China. Trump has given both Canada and Mexico now a 30-day reprieve, with both neighbors saying they will up patrolling on the borders. What can they actually do to prevent and placate Trump from taking it further? It does come at a huge cost to the US too. The Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has retaliated by imposing tariffs on US goods, on US beer, wine, bourbon, to fruits and vegetables, perfume, clothing, shoes, household appliances, furniture, sporting goods, lumber, which is critical for the construction industry, and plastics. British Columbia has asked residents to stop buying American liquor and removed all US brands from its shelves. Talking to us today on Trump's Tariff 2.0 that could either greatly weaken or strengthen the US and the newest challenge posed by China's Trojan horse, TikTok, and now DeepSeek, the artificial intelligence platform that China could use to influence social media, painting every other country in whichever way it wants. Decoding China's moves and decoding the US today are two experts in the US and China. Dr. Srikant Kondapalii, professor of China Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has a PhD in Chinese Studies. He's fluent in Mandarin. He's a postdoctoral fellow at People's University, Beijing, and a visiting professor at a string of universities across China, as well as Taipei in rival Taiwan, which I think is quite fascinating, Dr. Kondapalii. He's a prolific author, columnist, and a commentator on China. Welcome, Dr. Kondapalii.
Thank you very much.
Also with us is Dr. Monish Tourangbam, Director of Kalinga Institute of Indo-Pacific Studies and formerly an Associate Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. He was a visiting fellow at Stimson Center in Washington, D.C. He's part of several Track 2 dialogues, writes, and speaks extensively on the United States. Welcome, Dr. Monish Tourangbam.
Thank you so much.
So what brought on this Trump tariff torpedo? I mean, is fentanyl such a big threat? Trump's reasoning is that illegal immigration and the drug fentanyl has found their way into the US through the poorly policed borders that the US shares with Canada and Mexico. The Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has said that less than 1% of the fentanyl comes into the US from Canada. Dr. Kondapalii, would you like to comment on that? Is this the fact or fiction, or is it just a very convenient use of fentanyl and the border to, sort of bring Mexico in line or Canada in line for whatever reason?
Well, the fact of the matter is there are 75,000 to about 100,000 casualties in the United States based on the fentanyl or its precursors smuggled into the United States. This is the kind of addiction that many Americans have. So that is one factor which is motivating President Trump to impose tariffs. Now, 90% of these precursors are exported by China, either directly prior to 2020 or through Mexico and Canada. Previously, they used to export directly by post or by other means, now surreptitiously through the Mexican borders. So this is actually a humanitarian crisis in United States about the number of deaths. The President Biden had a discussion with the President Xi Jinping at the Filoli meeting in San Francisco in November 2023, where the Chinese suggested they will counter the drug mafia. There is one Chang market, which is essentially pushing through these drugs to the United States. So President Xi suggested to President Biden 2 years ago that they will put restrictions on the drug cartels. However, we have not seen much change. And I think this is partly because of the US-China decoupling process. Hence, the Chinese are exporting through the other markets as they do with trade. For instance, the MFN status provides for X number of items to be traded between A and B. However, China uses another country to also re-export these products to the other country. So as a result, China does not actually pay taxes, tariffs on these. And so China has abused the free trade area agreements. And on the other hand, China has not been able to allow the goods supplied by other countries. So China follows a protectionist trend in trade and uses the free trade area for exporting more. This has been the last 2 decades of Chinese mercantilist policies.
That's very interesting. So you are saying then that Trump is well within his rights to actually hit out at Canada and Mexico and China.
Well, most American administrations had a Nelson's eye on this aspect. They continue to import because these are cheaper goods coming up from China. So there is the American middle class being benefited out of this for over a long period of time. However, they are now looking at the logbooks and found that this is not so cheaper because the Chinese have surplus trade. And in the last 2 decades, United States lost $3.7 trillion to China on trade imbalance. That is the figure, $3.7 trillion.
That's amazing. Dr. Monish, if I could bring you in, I mean, Trudeau has said that all the tariff war is going to affect jobs in the US. He's talked about how factories could close down, that American auto assembly plants could shut down, and the price of food, groceries, and petrol could go up. And other vital goods that are vital to the US security, for example, nickel and potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum are all going to find themselves disappearing from the market, and the US would have to scramble around looking for alternative sources. So this could actually disrupt not just Canadian energy imports to use it, but could disrupt American jobs. I mean, not just a few jobs, tens and thousands of American jobs.
Yeah, I mean, to sort of begin with, I think there's no doubt to the fact that we have a disruptor in chief in the White House. And I think a lot of disruptions are going to unfold as the Trump administration carries on. As far as the tariffs are concerned, really it's not surprising. right? From the uh, campaign days, it was very clear that some very, very disruptive tariffs were coming into picture, not only with American so-called adversaries, but also as we now see, uh, the people on line of firing are America's closest allies, uh, neighboring countries, and also the European Union is very much on the line right now that we need to
Oh, I
be
see. So the
watching.
next target is the European countries.
That's, I mean, that's what you see in the news that the meetings in Brussels that have happened, right? And they're really waiting and watching as to how they could either preempt, preclude this kind of tariffs coming towards the European Union. So what I'm trying to say is that uh, this kind of disruptive tariffs, one, it is not surprising. Second, I think it, as Professor Kondapalii pointed out, there are three different dimensions to it, which were very much a part of, let's say Trump's road to the White House, or at least the promises that he kept making to the American people. One is the clamping down on illegal immigration. Second is national security consideration, of which the fentanyl crisis or the fentanyl epidemic in the United States is very much a part of the promise that he kept. And the fact that these tariffs have come, first of all, on some of the biggest trading partners of the United States. It's a big,
Yeah.
let's say, it's a big disruptive step in that sense. And I think a lot of counter retaliatory promises have been kept from the other side, as you pointed out, a list of things that Justin Trudeau just made a list of things how how retaliatory tariffs from the Canadians could also equally hurt and bite the Americans in the first place.
Yes.
Um, and I
But
think,
the Mexican president also,
yeah,
Dr. Monish, is quite interesting. I mean, she's objected to the implication that her government is close to the drug cartels
yeah,
and illegal trafficking.
yeah. I think, and there is a lot, if you see a number of news reports coming out from the United States, you see a lot of speculations being made right now in terms of the how the tariffs on China could also, and the retaliatory tariffs from China, if they could also impact, let's say, the supply chains. They could uh, eventually lead to consumers in the United States, you know, paying up for the tariff in the form of higher prices from the shelf. So I think there's a lot of speculations right now. Um, the big question is uh, how long this tariff game is going to play out. Nobody knows that, right? There is a lot of unknowns here. In the case of China also, Biden administration carried on a lot of national security related tariffs, right, which were started
Hmm.
by the Trump administration. So the 10% tariffs that you are seeing now is in addition to a lot of other tariffs which are already in place throughout the Biden administration. And so I think the important question for us to wait and watch would be in terms of how long, uh, at least with Canada and Mexico, how long is this tariff standoff tit for tat or eyeball to eyeball? How far this is going to go before they are able to give something to Trump that will make him look like a winner in the first place, right? That's very important for striking a deal with Trump. It's not about whether at first America wins or not. It's first of all about, you know, how what countries can offer to Trump as in order to preclude, disruptive tariffs. I think in the budget in India, we already saw some preemptive steps being made towards even motorcycles tariffs in India. So I think a lot of countries are bracing right now as to what is going to come ahead, what kind of steps they can take that they can offer to the Trump administration in order to strike a deal with the Trump administration and preclude the lose-lose of a tariff war with the United States. And I
Yeah,
think
that's a
who is
good
going
point.
to, yeah, who is going to lose how much? To what extent the Americans are going to lose? I think we'd have to wait and watch because not forget that when the Trump administration came in, overall it inherited a good economy. It's another fact that the Harris campaign was not able to build on to the good economy that was going on in terms of job creation, that was going in terms of the overall GDP growth. Yes, there was a problem of inflation. And it's mind-boggling to me as to how the Trump administration is going to tackle the inflation problem, because
Yeah.
that's one of the things that he promised to the Americans, that unlike the Biden administration, I am not going to raise prices for you. Now, if you are going to
Mm.
raise tariffs on your largest trading partners, it is eventually going to get on the price rise of consumers buying from the shelf. How the Trump
Yeah,
administration
the
is
other
going to do
issue basically also is that within Mexico itself, I mean, Mexico ends up selling something like 80% of its exports went to America last year.
this.
So, I mean, if this 25% tariff does actually take place, even after this 30-day hiatus, the GDP could fall. I mean, Trump could actually have a failing state on its border. Don't you think so, Dr. Kondapalii? And, I mean, the point is you are confronting, not consulting your two immediate neighbors. I mean, these are people who, I mean, Justin Trudeau's speech actually made out a very emotional kind of bond that the Canadians and the Americans share right across from fighting the Gulf War and the 444 days that the Canadians spent in Tehran trying to free the American hostages after the Iranian Revolution. So I mean, this is one aspect of it. Of course, the opposite, of course, is as you rightly said. Trump could be right about the fact that there is a deliberate plan by China to weaken the US through these drug and whatever other chemicals that are, being manufactured either in Mexico or elsewhere and brought into the US. So is this going to, become worse? Because China has already retaliated. It has imposed tariffs on US goods. It's threatened to take the matter to the World Trade Organization. So do you see this trade and tariff war becoming the new war between China and the US, so to speak?
Some fundamentals. 63% of Canadian um, uh, GDP is composed of exports and imports. And 73% of Mexican exports and imports constitute its GDP. And 34% of China's GDP is trade, export, and imports. India is roughly about 25%. Uh, uh, we have been exporting quite a bit recently. But when you look at the American trade, it is about roughly 24% of its GDP. Now, tariff increases will hurt Canadians and Mexicans and the Chinese more than the Americans. Tariffs based on these statistics of the GDP. For example, in the case of China, the China-US trade is roughly around $600 billion. And China exports $450 billion to the United States. US exports about $150 billion to China. Now, if United States imposes 100% tariffs, they would lose possibly $150 billion in their exports to the United States. In the case of China, if it imposes tariffs on the US, as it did 2 days ago, then it is going to hurt the Chinese themselves because they're exporting $450 billion to the United States. So this is, according to a Chinese proverb, lifting up a stone and pushing it onto your toes. It's going to hurt the Chinese more than the United States. There is a study done by Fudan University Economics Department. They found that the Chinese GDP will come down from 5% to 2.8%.
Oh.
So this is actually going to hurt the Chinese rather than the Americans. Whether the tariff wars are going to be the new normal, we do not know. But I think Trump is catering for his electoral promises and to his constituency with the tariff wars, because essentially Trump is an isolationist foreign policy proponent.
That's a
The
very interesting angle. Yes.
United States has the engagement policy and external balancing through the their bases abroad. But Trump is following the isolationist policy, and he's saying, I'm not concerned about what is going to be the problem for the Canadians or the Mexicans or the Chinese or anybody else, European Union included. What he's saying is that I'm not going to play the role that uh, United States played from 1945
Uh-huh.
on the balancing portion or engagement portion. He's going to follow the isolationist policy the United States followed since 19th century till about 1945. So it is
Yes, yes.
choice.
So he's basically saying that he won't play Big Brother, as has been expected of him in the Korean War, in the Vietnamese War, in Afghanistan, in across the world. He basically won't be the one who props up, uh, you know, anyone.
Yes, when
But
he's a big brother, when you are a big brother, you also
yeah,
need to provide for goods and services to the rest of the world. That
mm,
he's trying to say that we no longer want to play this.
yeah, that's an interesting angle, sir. Dr. Monish, tell me, Trump wants to use tariffs and corporate tax cuts to apparently attract huge foreign investments into the US. This is what he's saying. Will he succeed? I mean, he has a reputation. He's already getting a reputation now for disrupting American trading. So can it turn out to be a disincentive to investments? And how is it going to play out domestically? As Dr. Kondapalii says, yes, these are all electoral promises that he's made. But could there be a backlash? I mean, in the sense, could it start with protests against the US in Canada and Mexico? Because in the past, China has also used the same route. It's used trade restrictions to intimidate countries like Australia and so on and so forth. So China uh, could China take the US to Trump's US to the limit?
I think, see, uh, before I answer that, I jump in a little bit into and follow it up from what Professor Kondapalii also mentioned about isolationist Trump. And
Mm.
um, I mean, yes, there is a lot of, let's say, writings on that. And also, um,
Yeah,
the
there is a lot of,
yeah, there's a lot of writings on that, right?
yeah.
That what, I think the jury is still out on uh, what is the categorization of Trump really. That
Mm.
do we say, do we really put him into the box of an isolationist foreign policy president, or is it too early to come to that? I'm saying this also, because I feel that there is a way to divide the things that he's doing in the first days of his presidency, which is that if you look at the kind of executive orders that he literally signed on the first day, one, there is a slew of executive orders on domestic issues, and as you know,
Uh-huh.
the legal system in the US and the legislative structure of the US, there's a lot of pushback on those domestic issues. It can be on birthright citizenship, for instance. It's already up in 22 states courts or something, right? So he knows, and at least his advisors, they know that he's going to get a lot of pushback on domestic issues. On foreign policy issues, which trade policy is one of them. The U.S. presidency, by dint of the absence of any written restrictions on it, has a lot of prerogative powers. So what I'm trying to say is there's less, you know, checks and balances on foreign policy powers of the president, and that's why you are seeing a lot more vigorous moves from the Trump administration in pushing across a lot of foreign policy, let's say, moves, which is bound to have less of checks and balances from the US legal and the legislative structure. And that's
So
one of the problems.
he'll get a free hand,
Yeah, he
and
has
will
a
be
freer hand
able to
on
work along. I mean, this announced policy that he has made. I mean, that he has
yeah,
announced. He will be able to follow through on the policy that he has announced. That's what you're
yeah,
saying.
with less restrictions from or less pushback from the domestic scenario. And I feel that, as far as Canada and Mexico is concerned, you know, the one treaty that governed trade, arrangements in North America for a very long time, which is NAFTA, it's already out of the game, right? They have already renegotiated a new trade arrangement in North America, which is post NAFTA. So I think it is what he's trying to do is a part of the process of renegotiating an entire new trade arrangement with the American neighbors, which he believes that previous administrations were not able to do so to the benefit of the United States. So
I
what you are
see.
seeing now is a part and parcel of the renegotiating of the trade arrangements that governs the whole of North America. And we have to also remember that manufacturing industrial base in the US or North America is very integrated, right? So you can see just the components of auto parts or auto industries in North America, how integrated they are. You can see infrastructure projects being taken up in the US and the raw materials that are used in that, how integrated they are. So I feel that American economy and Trump's trade policy is passing through a phase where there is a lot of confusion about really understanding the new age of manufacturing, which is not like how he would like to take back to a time when there would be clear cut one and one plus one is equal to two mathematics of really made in America. So I think there's a
Hmm.
lot of complexities there. As far as foreign investments
So
are
he's
concerned,
pushing for made in America is what you're saying through all of this.
he is pushing for that, but I don't know whether it's really playing off to the complexities of the new supply chains. For instance,
Yeah.
what is going to follow up from the friend shoring and the near shoring that the Biden administration started, right? So what happens to the Chips and Sciences Act that the Biden administration started, which was part and parcel of the growing competition on new technologies with the Chinese? So what is going to take over from there? Is it going to dramatically scuttle all of that? Is it going to build on all of that, right? You already have foreign investors in the form of that. The Saudi billionaire proposing to put in $20 billion into building data centers in Midwest and the Sun Belt area
Hmm.
of America. So
That's
I think
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I think that these are new developments. It's still early into his administration. He's trying to keep the promises that he made to the American people. But what would be the repercussions of keeping those promises for American consumers, for American manufacturing industries, and part and parcel for the larger integrated North American market is something that we have to wait and watch.
Yeah. Dr. Kondapalii, if I can come back to you. I mean, Beijing has hit back big time. There's no question. It's hit the US with 10% tariffs on coal, on liquefied natural gas imports. I mean, they all come into force, as we said on Monday. There will be additional import controls now on rare metals, and this is being described as a, pattern that is there between China and the US that has gone on for some time. And as Dr. Monish has talked about, a rephrasing, a restructuring of trade agreements, free trade agreements, this counterpunching between these two countries. Do you see this playing out, in a less confrontational manner now? Or, I mean, what could happen?
Well, the uh, US Secretary of State had a conversation with Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and there is the speculation about Trump and Xi Jinping meeting, or at least having a phone call. This is what the American press has been saying about. So that also leaves some window open for renegotiations on this issue. However, there is this pattern that we see since the Trump first administration, followed by Biden administration as well, that the Americans have realized that the free lunches are over,
Mm,
and the
that's a good one.
Chinese need to, observe the trade reciprocity. That if you have surplus trade, they need to open up their market. Do you know that the American credit cards, American banking system, insurance, etc., are not allowed in China? Do
Oh,
you
I
know
see.
that Google, Yahoo, everything else do not open in China? Do you know that there is a lot of restrictions on the American, even Indian, by the way. Indian software companies are not part of any of the state-owned enterprises in China in terms of their software packages. China actively protects its market from the Indian pharmaceutical companies,
Oh,
excluding them in the public bidding processes guaranteed actually by the WTO, yet China doesn't really abide by the WTO provisions on free trade. So there is actually a problem here. The problem is that there are a lot of free lunches for the last 2 decades, and
and that's over.
countries like India may not have enough strength to question China, given the territorial dispute and also other vulnerabilities. But the global leader, hegemon, United States is taking the bull by the horn.
Hmm. So you guys actually you believe that he may be even doing a good thing. I mean, interestingly,
For the
on
United
this
States. For the United States.
for the United States, yes. So on this 30-day reprieve, if I can just go back to that, Canada has promised, so has Mexico, that they're going to put in a $1.3 billion plan to reinforce the border with new choppers, technology, personnel, and even appoint a fentanyl czar, is what Canada is saying. Does Mexico have the same kind of resources? Because the vulnerability and the level of porosity of the border with Mexico seems to be much, much higher than Canada. What do you say, Dr. Manish? Is there such a contrast, and will something be done about it?
Uh, I think, see, as far as illegal immigration and even the fentanyl issue is concerned, the borders in the south has been the major concern. Canada is, kind of an added uh, element to it, right? Even during the campaign and also the national emergency that came out. So Trump put out two national emergencies right after his inauguration. One was on energy and one was on security at the southern borders, right? So the
Yeah,
from day one, I mean, the main axe to grind has been with the southern border and not so much with the
I
northern
see.
border, right? So uh, Canada has said whatever it has said in response to the allegations or the tariff slamping from the Trump administration. But the real issue of checking illegal immigration has been on the southern border. The deployment of U.S. National security and law enforcement agencies has been put in place from the time the national emergency was announced by Trump administration. So as far as checking illegal immigration and national security elements, anti-national security elements at the southern border is concerned, I think um, it's more about how much the Mexican government is able to negotiate with the American government in terms of giving the kind of assistance and giving the kind of support that the Trump administration would like from the Mexican government. Not so much in terms of the Mexican government taking it upon themselves, to pull in the resources, but for that kind of an arrangement. The American government is already doing that. If you read just the national security emergency report and the kind of um, resources that the Trump administration is ready to put at the cost of protecting the southern border at what he calls as an invasion, and all the concerns that he has from the southern border. I think the Trump administration has put in the kind of resources and put in the kind of attention that is required. Putting the word national emergency is a big thing, right? It amasses the kind of resources that is required. For the Mexican government, it's about talking to the Trump administration and coming to arrangements about how much they're going to support and contribute to this process. And in that process, how that is going to impact on the renegotiating of the tariff structures between the two countries.
My next question is actually about the role being played by Trump's unelected shadow president, Elon Musk, and his role, because he's been accused of amassing unaccountable illegal power from behind the scenes. I mean, is he behind this? Is he the one who's going to have to pay the price ultimately? Because Canada is already saying that it's going to scrap this $100 billion contract that it has, that Starlink has with Ontario to set up the high-speed internet through Starlink in this Canadian province. And Musk has apparently been accused of a whole load of other interference, in scrapping US aid and actually getting access to the US Treasury, payments of US, something like $5 trillion to, various bank accounts and things. He's claiming that he is the one who can overhaul the whole federal government and trim waste by $1 trillion. Dr. Kondapalii, would you like to comment on the fact on this extraordinary role that is being played by Elon Musk and the fact and how it impacts in China, because he has major investments in China as well?
Well, this is part of the American politics in the sense that every elected president favors his electoral constituency and those who have supported in the election campaign. We have seen Elon Musk has contributed substantially for the funds of the Republican Party. So this is quite normal in the American political system. As long as there is no conflict of interest between the two, they have been rewarded. Many of the close confidants of the candidates, both Democratic and Republican, they have rewarded their inner circles with plum posts, mainly ambassadors or even the ministerial positions, departmental positions. So that has been a usual system in the United States. Unlike in others where we have bureaucracies who are, kind of nominated, etc. But these are political appointments which the Americans have instituted from the beginning. So we can see this as quite normal. On the other hand, of course, the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and other bodies, these are, as long as there is no conflict of interest between the two, then it is quite understandable. Elon Musk
As long as
also
there's no conflict of interest between the Trump-appointed, and the actual institutions.
Between business interests of Elon Musk and the government responsibilities, etc. So as long as that is not there, then American system is functioning for the past several hundred years on this aspect. So I do not see a problem here. The problem is, of course, whether the other countries could influence Elon Musk in terms of the business interests. So that is what they need to.
As in Russia, is that what you and Israel?
As in China, because Tesla has a huge plant in Shanghai, and Elon Musk is said to be close to Premier Li Qiang in China. So that is what I was suggesting.
That's very interesting. That's a very interesting connection. What about India? You want to say something, Dr. Monish, on the same subject?
No, I just wanted to put in 2 points to whatever Professor has said, which is
Yeah,
that having having non-elected you know uh, uh, people who have uh, put in a lot of money to the fundraising process in the election campaign and having them close to decision making is a practice very well known to America. What is special is the level of uh, financial power that Elon Musk himself brought into the campaign, and the kind of access that would give to him, in the sense that Dodge is a very uh, peculiar setup, in the sense that it is not a part of any federal bureaucracy. It's outside the bureaucracy, in the sense that it has been instituted with the very purpose of cleaning the swamp of bureaucracy, as they call it, within the US, right? So, in that sense, uh, this particular element is something which is doesn't have much of a history. You know, uh, you have a lot of history of powerful individual influencing the president, but there has never been a case where that powerful individual has been given a particular official setup in order with the purpose of cleaning the bureaucracy itself. So
yeah,
that puts
yeah.
Elon
So
Musk in a
this
very
is
different, yeah,
so
in a
Elon Musk
very
has been
different this
given
thing.
a much more powerful role than the people who have preceded the favorites that have preceded other administrations.
Yeah, I mean, he has gone to the point of commenting on the German elections in the far right parties in Germany. There is a lot of pushback from the South African government right now in terms of its own influences towards aid from United States to South Africa, for instance. So we are just beginning to watch the game. We have to wait and watch how this unfolds, or whether this bromance will last very long, or will it falter in some time.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Now, what about India, Dr. Kondapalli? Because Trump has threatened to impose tariffs on Indian imports as well. I mean, which areas are going to get affected? I mean, he's already in the post process of deporting illegal Indians. The first batch, I think, are arriving, landing up this week. So, is that a deal that was reached during the meeting between India's Foreign Minister Jaishankar and the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio?
Well, I think the problems between US and India are quite minimal compared to Mexico, Canada, China.
Yeah.
So India is in a relatively comfortable position compared to these countries. I don't think anybody is losing sleep in New Delhi about the election of President Trump. And this is exactly what Dr. Jaishankar mentioned, that the we have very few contentious issues in the bilateral relations between United States and India. Trade, yes, there is some trade deficit, but it looks like India would try to purchase arms, and secondly, LNG from the United States to fill up these surpluses. That this is only not, I mean, the surplus is not as big as the Chinese surplus or the Canadian surplus or Mexican surplus. This is quite manageable. So possibly these could be addressed through acquisitions, arms,
Yeah.
and
What about the other
commercial.
challenge, What about the other challenge, Dr. Kondapalli, posed by China to the US? The new one that has come up in, with the launch of this new artificial intelligence platform, DeepSeek, from China. It's raised very pertinent questions, I think, about the penetration of the communist deep state, as somebody said to me the other day. So, I mean, because the announcement by DeepSeek of this new era of cheap artificial intelligence, clearly raises the stakes, isn't it? And this geopolitical tussle that is there between the US and China, because the Chinese started to build up an intelligence model. Uh, I mean, as DeepSeek has done, with a fraction of the cost that the US companies have notched up. And India doesn't even come close. We have I mean, we don't even have a homegrown kind of innovation push in the area of artificial intelligence.
This is quite an ironical issue. I think the Americans are to be blamed for this because the Chinese were importing NVIDIA chips,
That's right.
500 to $750 billion a year
Yeah.
for the past 6 or 7 years. So they purchased quite a lot of stuff before the tariffs kicked in and the semiconductor ban imposed by President Biden
Biden.
in. And so they have already saturated the market with the American chips. And then they did this, experiment with DeepSeek. But this is also again ironical because much of this came from NVIDIA and other big tech companies in United States. Uh, Thirdly, the even though it is an open AI, much of the information is channelized back into China. So you open up a DeepSeek and then register. Much of your information data is procured from your computer by the DeepSeek. This
Oh,
is problematic because Indian minister mentioned, Mr. Ashwini mentioned that we will
restaurant.
use the DeepSeek AI, but it looks like we are going to lose a lot of data to
Yes.
China. Is opening up to the Chinese, like the TikTok does, like any Chinese app, because the operating system is in Shenzhen or in Beijing or in Shanghai. And so much of this data would be lost. So the fact that the DeepSeek has been able to click in the US market after the TikTok ban uh, and the 90-day reprieve that it got. So similar experiment is being done with many Americans going to lose their data, and increasingly because DeepSeek has been downloaded maximum in India, Indians are going to lose more data.
That is
This
very
was the
interesting.
uh,
Really? So you're saying the Indians downloaded more DeepSeek than other countries?
yeah, by factual information. That is what the various reports have suggested, which means that after the Galwan incident, Dr. Jaishankar announced the banning of 218 apps from China, including
Hmm.
TikTok, UC browser, and other. It looks like they are now coming back again into the Indian market.
That's fascinating because I mean China's technological reach is clearly growing. I mean this one with one deep seek, it's really announced its arrival, and and shown the depth of its expertise really, and I'm sure it must have set off just as India should be worried. I think a major influence, sort of Western society should also be worried. Don't you think so, Dr. Manish? Is it making the kind of rapid advances that shows that it will control and influence the world's high-tech future in the coming years?
Um, I don't know the extent of control that it will have in the coming years, but definitely I think the red flags that Professor Kondapalii pointed out is very much in place in the sense, and it also brings to the question about your point about where India is positioned in all of this, right?
Yes,
And I think that's where I would say that um, despite other kind of thoughts or other kind of arrangements that inevitable arrangements that we might have with China. As far as technologies are concerned, the new Chinese technologies are still a matter of big security concern. You know, and they have. I think there's no sense of any time they coming into the picture of what we would term as trusted technologies. Now, the very idea of trusted technologies is in fact a very loaded term. That what kind of technologies do you really trust? But as far as Chinese technologies are concerned, I think. recent evidences have proven the point that they definitely don't come under the box of trusted technology. So, and in the absence of our own competitive streak in those areas that can match, for example, the Chinese, I think that places us, you know, in a position where we need to um, find our working arrangements with whatever we whatever initiatives we have taken up with the United States, for instance, right? If you look at the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, ISEC, it's a Biden era initiative, and it's really in the center of the use of both military and commercial new technologies. The kind of arrangements that we would have with the United States on the use of critical minerals and exploitation of critical minerals. So I think for us, this makes it all the more important to probe further into what are trusted technologies for us, right?
So, do we have any kind of innovation that is similar to ChatGPT or or DeepSeek? I mean, does India have anything like that at all in the making? I mean, is it something that India puts primacy on, because there's so much talk in the last Biden administration about the next center for the production of semiconductors being moved to India. I mean, given that Taiwan seeks to rival China is under threat. So and also does India realize that the push for innovation and AI is where the real power will be in the years to come? Dr. Kondapalii.
I think the Indian tech sector is quite advanced in nature. What we have seen in this round is to, say that there is a one-man option, um, uh, that there is competition and, trying to display their prowess. But in the case of India, the tech sector is quite advanced in nature.
It's
It is
advanced, but do we have a Liang Wenfeng? Do we have a Premier Li Qiang who actually picks up
thousands.
someone like this and promotes one person?
Thousands in India, in
Hmm.
Bangalore and other places. So I do not think we are lacking any.
Lagging behind?
So this is so we should see the current round between DeepSeek and NVIDIA as a flexing muscles at this point of time. In the case of India, there are a little bit of complications, which is we are a multilingual country, and so we need to have a platform which is catering for at least 20 official languages in India, apart
Yeah.
from Hindi and English. We
Yes.
also need to be inclusive because of the kind of governance that is needed, effective governance that is needed. In the case of China, obviously, the Communist Party doesn't bother about that. So there
Hmm.
is a problem. The sensitivities are also about cost. I don't think DeepSeek $5.8 million is a real figure because, as I
Ah,
mentioned
you're
before,
saying that. That's exactly what I read, Dr. Kondapalli, saying that, the figure could be far more. This is just a manufactured figure just to create this impact, this impression in the world that look what we can do, what you've done for $500 million, we can do for 5.4.
given the costs involved, in the United States, it comes to about $400 per hour, while India is trying to bring it down to $100 per hour
Uh-huh.
uh, because of the cost considerations in the Indian market. I do not think the Chinese have come up with the $5.8 million because
Hmm.
they have imported hundreds of billions of dollars of chips from the United States and other countries. They have not mentioned these things because China wants to create an awe effect and conduct a psychological war on the rest of the world. And we
Ah,
all have fallen prey to these tactics.
we
So
have,
I
we
think
have.
I think we have enough talent in India to bring up with the suitable AI and other technologies.
Yeah, because overnight this boyish Liang has gone from a nobody to a somebody. I mean, and it's also because as what I've read that his small team used minimal resources and emphasized algorithmic efficiency over massive hardware deployments, and he did it for, like you said, for $5.6 million. And OpenAI now is saying that it has spent $100 million, over $100 million to, basically to see that ChatGPT comes up in the way that it did. So and this is a very interesting twist, actually, Dr. Kondapalli, and I feel that Trump's shadow, Elon Musk and Stargate and all of these are, I mean, could be the answer. I mean, are we looking at you know the leadership pushing the U.S. Trump administration pushing for Elon Musk and as the man who will run this, because there's a project apparently backed by various other top guys, Oracle and Japan SoftBank and OpenAI's chief Sam Altman, who have committed to another $500 billion to create, you know, something like this, another large language model. Do you think China
Yes.
has already raced ahead because it's in the terms of car manufacturing, it's ahead of Japan. On ChatGPT and other artificial intelligence areas, has it actually raced ahead of everyone else, or is it are we looking at you know a game that's being played really, a
Well, the
one-upmanship?
Silicon Valley has its own advantages by having a huge talent pool there. But I would actually like to mention about India rather than the US model or the China model.
Hmm.
India needs to focus on its own model of inclusivity and diversity in the sense of being a diverse society with 1.4 billion people and young talent, 27 years old, composed of 58% of the population. So I think India needs to be more innovative and address the AI for our developmental needs rather than a tech war that happens between two elite sections. I don't think Lian Wenfeng will succeed because his predecessor, Ma Yun, the chief of Alibaba, was
Uh-huh.
shunted by the Chinese Communist Party
Correct.
because he raised an issue about the Chinese banking system. And today, the Alibaba chief, former chief, is on the run. He went to Thailand. He's now in Japan, unable to go back to China. So
Mm,
similar problems will happen to any innovator in China if they don't follow the Communist Party's diktats.
correct.
So
Correct.
there is actually a problem in terms of creativity in China. And I think the Indian model has to be much more inclusive rather than following these two models, American or China model.
That's very well put. Dr. Manish, if you can just, we can wrap up if you can. If you
Yeah,
could just tell me
yeah.
what is the difference going to be between Trump 2.0 and Trump 1.0? I mean, he's set off this trade and tariff war with all these countries, makes no distinction between allies and adversaries. How is this going to play out? I mean, doesn't the US need its friends more than ever in this current situation? Because you can't see countries like Canada shunning the US, and trade agreements being revisited again and again. As you say, the next target is Europe. So, is it going to be Trump,
Uh,
the deal maker, triumphing, or?
well, I mean, I sometime back I read something about Southeast Asian perceptions about Trump, and It was that now Southeast Asia or Indo-Pacific is going to move from a rules-based order to a deals-based order.
Deals based order. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So I think having said that, I think speculating in Canada or the European countries like walking away from the United States and there being a deep schism and a rupture in the Western alliance, I think is still I'd be speculating too much if I was trying to oversee all of that. Whatever is happening, at least not, the US, China, Russia, Iran angle is different, right? There is a lot of geopolitical fault lines over there. As far as the kind of dealings that he's doing with Canada or the NATO allies in the European Union is concerned, yes, there's a lot of unknowns. Uh, you know, uh, uh, there is a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in terms of the American allies as to how they are going, what are the new terms of engagement are going to be between Trump America and Trump's allies and French. So that definitely is there, but um, a definite rupture that is too early to sort of put my finger on. Um,
Okay.
Having said that, I would put it this way that one the Trump 1.0 was a Trump who came to the White House and was surprised that he came to the White House in the first place. Even he was surprised, like everyone, all of us, right? So you can see in the kind of cabinet positions that he filled in Trump 1.0, the time he took to do that. And you can see the difference now in Trump 2.0, the rapidity with which he was naming nominees, for instance, right? So it was certainly coming together of a team of loyalists within Trump 2.0 who would not stand on the line of what he wanted to do as far as trade or arrangements with neighbors or adversaries or allies are concerned. So you are going to see a lot more disruptions, right, in the next 4 years. um, Having said that, I also would say that what you know, America seeing a Trump-like presidency is also a symptom of the uncertain global environment that we are populating in right now, right? So it is the way Trump is responding and how it is finding resonance within the US American electorate is also a signal of the kind of world that we are populating in. So whether Trump will disrupt the world further down into more chaos, or whether Trump administration and all the chaos will be a silver lining within which you would have found an American president who would have the courage to stand up to Beijing and uh, put a finger in front of their eyes, and then it will be a silver lining for other countries to finally find, to finally find uh, the perfect storm within which to deal with Beijing is something that we have to see.
That's very interesting. Dr. Kondapalii, do you have a final comment?
I think I agree with Dr. Monish that there would be disruptions all around in the next 4 years' time. What India needs to do in this context is to focus on its own national interests, as with other countries as well. They need to focus then on their own, developmental aspects and national interests.
That's very interesting. So Trump, the ultimate deal maker. Basically, the big question is whether he will come up trumps. Thank you, Dr. Kondapalii, for coming on the show. Thank you very much, Dr. Monish Tourangbam, for
Thank
coming
you.
on the show as well. Thank you, viewers, for watching the Global Express. Please click on the New Indian Express website and the Global Express icon and share. Thanks very much. Thank you, guys.